Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on October 24th, Thursday, 2024. This one, folks, is going to make your blood boil. But before we get to that, please bear in mind I have canceled tomorrow night's vid chat. The biggest reason, as you know, is I have been dealing with a bit of a household emergency, a leaky hot water last Friday night. I had to have that completely removed and replaced, along with electrical work updating to the new heater. The old one was very old. So that's cost an arm and a leg. And in addition to that, where the heater was in kind of a storage area, which literally was just packed full of stuff. So I've exhausted myself going through a bunch of stuff, moving things in and out, and I'm just, quite frankly, folks, too tired to do a vid chat tomorrow night. And I apologize for this, but I hope you'll understand. The second reason I decided that it may not be a good thing to try and do it anyway is, as you know, President Trump has accepted an invitation to appear on the Joe Rogan podcast tomorrow night, so I suspect many of you will be tuned into that anyway. That's where we are with the emergency situation and the vid chat. I also want to mention that if you've been watching, we're already seeing the narrative preparation. There are votes, there are accusations of votes that have been registered or by people voting early in Tarrant County, Texas. That's the Fort Worth area of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. There have already been public accusations on on Twitter or X, that have voters stating very clearly and unequivocally that they were voting for Trump, and when their printed ballots were printed, the ballot was recorded as having voted for the Ayatollah Kamalarki. So they're prepping the narrative. In Wisconsin, the flood of early voters broke down the state's electronic voting system, so the shenanigans are already afoot. I'm expecting even more shenanigans relating to the certification. If you thought last time with Mike Pence was bad, remember who the current sitting vice president is, in case there is a Trump win, which we're not guaranteed. We don't even know when the election count will be over. I'm expecting lots of shenanigans. I hate to say it, but I am. But, as I said, there's another story out there that will make your blood boil. But it is, in a certain sense, related to the election, particularly if you bother to read the story and look at the graphs that accompany it. This is a story that appeared on Zero Hedge, and as I say, it was shared by our friend SC. And he shared it on the forum. I thought it was an important enough story that I wanted to talk about it and get it out so that those of you who are not following the forum can read and hear this story for yourself. The headline is, quote, "Once you know, you cannot unknow. Whistleblower reveals federal-funded industrial-size staffing firm shipping migrant kids around the United States." And I'm going to read much of this article because I have to tell you, folks, my blood is boiling. I'm angry. I'm ashamed that we've allowed this to continue to this point. There is nothing good I have to say about the current people in Washington, D.C. for allowing this to happen. We fought a civil war to get rid of this sort of crap, and here we are. And by the way, note the party doing it. So the article reads as follows, and I'm starting right at the very beginning. Listen very carefully. Quote, A contract specialist from the General Services Administration, or the GSA, spoke with investigative reporter James O'Keefe about the federal government awarding a massive contract to an industrial-sized staffing agency to transport unaccompanied migrant kids across the country. Quote, "My line in the sand moment was when I found out that GSA had awarded a contract to a company to transport unaccompanied minors," unquote. GSA Senior Contract Specialist Clarissa Rapee told O'Keefe in a sit-down interview shared on X, unquote. Let me stop there. I don't blame this woman at all for being upset, because what is going on right now is just as much of a slavery trade as what used to happen in New Amsterdam or New York, with slaves being imported into this country during the colonial days. Nothing different. Nothing. And so much the better for your collateral or your investor if you can get a hold of children and get them into slavery and capitalize, quite literally, on their labor for the rest of their lives. This is, folks, I cannot even begin to tell you how disgusting this is. To continue with the Zero Hedge article, quote, Rapee explained that the General Services Administration, on behalf of the federal government, awarded MVM, a private security contractor with ties to the CIA, NSA, FBI, and Homeland Security, with a massive $347 million contract for the transportation services of unaccompanied minors across the United States. She said the contract made her feel, quote, like someone kicked me in the gut, unquote. Rapee described the federal government treated unaccompanied migrant children like, quote, commodities like potato chips on a truck, unquote. Yeah, chattel slavery, folks. She noted this MVM contract highlights, quote, the big money business, unquote, in the migrant crisis. It's slavery, folks. Once you know, you cannot unknow, Rapee stated, warning that the horrifying conditions she witnessed inspired her to speak out. It's about the children, and it's my duty now to speak up, she said. Now, I'm skipping toward the very end of this article. And I really hope, folks, that you will click on the link and read the article and look at the accompanying graphs, because there's something else that this story is mentioning. Most of these children are being shipped to Biden-Harris counties, in other words, counties that voted for this administration during the last election. There are a few large shipments to Trump counties, but you'll notice that if that's the case, then there is also a connection, a potential connection, to some galloping election interference going on. So not only is it slavery, but, perhaps there are threats. We'll treat you worse if you don't vote our way or do whatever we tell you to do. In other words, I can't begin to tell you my disgust and anger here. I cannot begin to tell you. And our border czar is saying that she was never the border czar. You are complicit. And I want to point out something for people to remember. During his first administration, no matter how many mistakes were made, and there were a great deal, one of the things that Mr. Trump attempted to address over and over directly with frequent comments to the news media was the extent and scale of the human trafficking crisis permitted by the border, open border, and his attempt to deal with it. You'll recall he even signed executive orders trying to limit and curtail this abominable traffic. Border czar indeed. Skipping to the end of the article, quote, last month, muckrakers Anthony Rubin dropped a bombshell in a report titled Finding the Fed's Missing Children, Child Trafficking in America, unquote. He provided intelligence that MVM was caught moving unaccompanied migrant children around the country. In 2012, the head of Garda World told Reuters that the Middle East cut the staffing firm, quote, busier than ever. I think we may have had a little interruption there, so let me go back and reread what I just said. In 2012, the head of Garda World told Reuters that Middle East conflicts had kept the staffing firm busier than ever, and business has never been greater, adding, I don't want to say it's a gold rush, but business is very good, unquote. The American people need to understand the same industrial-sized staffing firms that profited off the deep state's endless wars in the Middle East are profiting off the Biden-Harris migrant invasion, a government-created crisis. Taxpayers funded the migrant invasion chaos. Yeah. And folks, once again, it is slavery. It is slavery. If you look back at the child trafficking, human sex trafficking ring scandals of all the way back to the Franklin scandal in the G.H.W. Bush administration back in the 1980s and 90s, on up through the Penn State scandal, Jimmy Savile in the United Kingdom, Edward Heath, all of that stuff. I long ago opined that this was a global network that was enabling all of these different scandals all over the world to appear. And at the time, I was sort of ridiculed by some people, not many people, but there were a few. But this is kind of the proof of the pudding, because now we have active federal government participation in a massive staffing operation, transportation operation, and human trafficking. I want you to ask yourselves this. Granted, these people may be here or coming here illegally. It doesn't make what's going on any less rotten, because how would you like it if your children were kidnapped or decided to go to a foreign country and then were kidnapped by the government of that country and shipped around the country for whatever purposes they may have in mind? Folks, that's slavery, pure and simple. And it's not even, in a certain sense, folks, it's not even chattel slavery. Because even under that system, where it was legalized, even under that system, there were certain legal restraints and regulations a slaveholder had to fulfill. Here, you're just a non-entity, bought and traded at will, and apparently shipped around the country willy-nilly through a federal government contract. Let that sink in. That is how corrupt, let me repeat this, that is how corrupt and how evil things really are in the swamp. And as I said before, border czar indeed. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. So that's it for today's news and views from the Nefarium, everybody. Remember, there's no vid chat tomorrow. I just kind of need a break after working most of this week. I'm still not done moving the stuff back into that storage area. So please keep abreast of the vid chat schedule. Our next vid chat is going to be in the month of November. If I remember correctly, it will be occurring after the U.S. presidential selection, which, God help us, I'm expecting bad things to follow this one. We have a group of criminals that simply will not relinquish power. So that's it, folks. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye bye, and God bless.